All right, in under 30 minutes, Louis Otieno will be here with the day's discussions, deep discussions over all the issues that we'll be discussing. But first, in the news.
We begin tonight with an exclusive report of yet another shocking twist in the fake policeman saga. KTN has now learnt that the man had been recommended for investigation in the massacre of police officers in Baragoi.
A special police probe team concluded that Joshua Waiganjo might have leaked crucial information after attending high-level security meetings on the Baragoi operation.
However, in a strange twist of events, his name was mysteriously removed from the final report of the committee. But the new Inspector General of Police has now recalled the original report that implicated Waiganjo.
KTN's crime and investigations reporter Dennis Onsarigo begins our news coverage with that expose.
It is now emerging that as early as November last year, the name of Joshua Waiganjo, now facing criminal charges for allegedly posing as a police officer, was the subject of discussion at police headquarters. In fact, he had been linked to the incident in which 42 police officers were massacred in an ambush in Samburu County. In a confidential report prepared by high-level committee and submitted to the then Commissioner of Police Matthew Itere, the team wanted Joshua Waiganjo, a Nakuru-based businessman, investigated over the massacre of 42 police officers who were on a mission to recover stolen livestock. The report suggests that Joshua Waiganjo, a Nakuru-based businessman who attended crucial security meetings, may have leaked the planning and late execution of the botched police operation that left 42 police officers dead. The report, written 6 days after the Baragoi massacre, says in part the conduct and the role of the alleged KPR commander, Mr. Waiganjo, ACP, and a bank branch manager, Mr. Gerald, to be thoroughly investigated on suspicion of having betrayed the operation, as they were reported to have attended various security meetings. KTN's investigations desk has learned that the final report table before the Internal Security Ministry had some of the recommendations and findings missing, and Waiganjo's name had been removed, as was that of the Nakuru-based businessman who works for a microfinance institution. Waiganjo is seen here flying in a police chopper just a day after the massacre the then Police Commissioner Matthew Itere blamed on field commanders.
I was taken through the planning process. Everything was good. I think it's only that the operation rigged and the people were ambushed 2 kilometers to the scene.
But one that KTN has now learnt could have been leaked by people sat in sensitive security meetings days before the Baragoi massacre. The memo further says 2 questionable characters, a Mr. Waiganjo ACP, who is reported to be introducing himself as the ESOP's ASTU and ESOP's Rift Valley province, and Mr. Gerald traveled to Baragoi with the PPO and other officers. Their mission is not clear. But despite such findings by a police team, nothing moved. Vigilance House buried the findings, wishing away the killing of 42 gallant police officers in an ambush described as the worst in policing in recent times. In a meeting chaired by the newly appointed Inspector General of the National Police Service, the name of a man who conned his way to such security meetings featured prominently. This after 5 years of adorning a police hat, gear, and enjoying the privileges that come with the title of a deputy provincial police officer. Joshua Waiganjo was the second most powerful police officer in the expansive Rift Valley province, sitting in for the provincial police officer in his absence. He knew the workings of the criminal underworld and, according to police investigations, had several titles to his name. KTN had reported that a local politician who enjoys a close relationship with powerful figures within government used to interfere with police operations in the region and could have been influential in giving orders to senior police officers in the region at the height of the cattle rustling incident. With the latest information that yes, indeed, the man now facing criminal charges in the same province where he wielded so much power was not working alone, Vigilance House gave him the nod. But the big question remains, just to pull the strings to have this man, Joshua Waiganjo, become the second most powerful cop in the Rift Valley. And with the report now linking him to one of the most horrific happenings in the country's history of policing, just will take the flag. Denison Sarigo, KTN Prime.
The discord in the CORD coalition over the proposed joint nomination procedure is deepening, with members of the key partners joining the protest. ODM aspirants from Lower Eastern and the Ford Kenya National Executive Council say they would push ahead with the individual party nominations, but as Rita Tinina reports, CORD is not giving up on the joint nomination proposal just yet.
A Sunday evening meeting called by Prime Minister Raila Odinga to try and resolve the CORD nomination row was inconclusive. Representatives of partner parties in the coalition agreed to forward their concerns to the CORD Election Coordinating Committee by tomorrow. But even as parties await the outcome of the latest intervention, the chorus of dissent over joint nominations continued, and this time it was coming from one of the so-called major parties in the coalition. At the Ford Kenya headquarters, a National Executive Council meeting was unanimous in its resolution.
All Ford Kenya members will have their nominations at their respective county levels.
The party, however, says it is ready to negotiate on joint nominations for certain areas.
Where we feel consensus has to be reached, we shall go in for consensus building.
Ford Kenya has set the 17th of January for its nominations. As Ford Kenya moved ahead with nomination plans, another major partner was singing the same tune. At least 100 aspirants from Kitui, Makueni and Machakos voiced their opposition to the joint nominations.
They have said no, they are not going to participate in joint nominations.
They are now blaming their party leader, Raila Odinga, for failing to take their concerns into account.
We now feel abandoned by the party leader and the party hierarchy.
Yesterday, members of another major partner in the coalition, the Wiper Democratic Movement, too, opposed the joint nomination rule. Elsewhere, representatives of the major parties including ODM, TNA and URP snapped a meeting called by the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights to deliberate on the upcoming party primaries, as UDF announced that its primaries will also take place on the 17th of January. The latest revolt by members of key partners in the coalition now means that the entire nomination exercise may be in doubt. And it will be interesting to see whether the coalition will push ahead with the joint nominations and risk a major fallout, or whether it will use the next 10 days to try and resolve the nomination discord in CORD. Rita Tinina, KTN, Nairobi.
And that story brings us to our big question, and tonight we're asking you, do you support joint nominations? Send your brief comments beginning with a yes or no to our SMS number 8040, and we'll sample your comments at the end of these live newscasts. Betty.
Well, thanks, Matt. Still keeping with that story, the trouble brewing in the CORD coalition over joint nominations is no strange occurrence in Kenya's politics. Over the years, in the run-up to the elections, the so-called small parties have cried foul that they were being undermined by the bigger parties. And as KTN's senior reporter Aaron Oching found out, many a times the voices of the smaller parties are to be heard.
A headache of holding the alliance amid cracks at the parliamentary, county and ward level over how to conduct its nomination. A rather harsh reality of how mergers and coalitions end up shortchanging parties with small number of members is something that cannot be ignored. CORD's situation is not a new phenomenon, with the current president having been elected as a result of a conglomeration of parties under the umbrella Party of National Unity, PNU. But the fate of parties that join the bigger ones can be equated to streams joining a main river. A perfect example of a party that was swallowed up as soon as it joined another party was the Raila-led NDP in 2002 that was dissolved as soon as it held its delegates conference with KANU. Raila knows this too well, having literally sold his NDP party to the then ruling party KANU.
Delegates of the Special National Delegates Convention hereby dissolve the National Development Party with immediate effect.
That was in 2002. In 2007, several parties had to put a formidable alliance to counter the popularity of ODM, hence the formation of PNU, whose presidential aspirant was declared the winner of the election. PNU constituted parties like DP, Ford Kenya, New Ford Kenya, Safina, Sisi kwa Sisi, KNC, plus several others. They too had their fair share of trouble at the nomination stage.
Kuna mahali kokote kumekuwa na direct nomination. Kila mahali kumekuwa na nominations ambao zinakuwako, lakini hatujajua mkataba ambao utatumiwa.
What guarantee do we have that we are not going to be leaving out? We want the public to choose the right candidate at the right time.
Most of these parties are completely dormant and only operated under PNU until last year, when they were officially registered at the Registrar of Political Parties.
Parties which are styled small parties, and by styling them small parties, history is there. There was a time when one of the ruling parties in India, which is one of the biggest democracies in the world.
It is a problem that most coalitions undergo, especially if candidates are forced to battle it with the perennial rivals from other parties for the same ticket at the nomination stage, and that is why the fringe parties are up in arms over joint nominations being proposed by the likes of CORD, for they surely know that 2013 is not going to be any different. Aaron Ocheng, KTN Prime.
As party organs grappled with the party nominations headache, their leaders were busy traversing the country in a bid to secure votes ahead of the March 4th election. The Jubilee Alliance pitched camp in Kisii, while CORD took their campaigns to Marakwet. KTN's Edith Kimani has the details.
The Jubilee Coalition was today in Kisii for the last of a 3-day campaign tour in the region. The alliance on Sunday outlined their economic roadmap and today shifted gears to preach peace. The National Alliance Uhuru Kenyatta asked Kenyans to maintain harmony in the days leading to and after the elections.
What we now seek are leaders who will not only follow through with that process, but use that process of reform to transform this country for the benefit of 40 million Kenyans.
The Jubilee marriage partners also expressed confidence in their team, saying the track record of those in the alliance would garner them the much-needed votes to win in the next election.
Musalia alikata njia akaondoka, Charity Ngilu akakitoa, Balala akakata njia fupi, yule Nyaga akaondoka, Ruto akaenda Jubilee, yule jamaa amebaki peke yake.
Elsewhere, the Coalition for Reform and Democracy, CORD, was in Marakwet, where they visited victims of the landslide which claimed 11 lives. CORD presidential flag bearer Raila Odinga asked those present to not be hoodwinked by politicians promising change.
Sera zetu hatungeweza kutekeleza, manake tuliingia kwenye ndoa ya lazima, ile harusi ambayo sisi hatukutongoza msichana, na tumekaa kwa hiyo ndoa kwa miaka 5. Si tumevumilia kutosha.
Raila also said those who had worked with him in previous elections and ditched him to form other parties showed their non-committal stance to issue-based politics.
Kesho hiyo siku nyingine, hiyo ilikuwa ni mwaka 2008. Ikaja ya 9, ikaja ya 10, ya 11, ya 12. Sasa tuko ya 13. Hii ndio ile siku nyingine ya kesho tulikuwa tunasema. Ile kesho tulisema 2038 ni leo sasa.
The coalitions are expected to shift their focus on party nominations in the coming days, with election campaigns set to intensify as we get closer to the March 4th date. Edith Kimani, KTN.
Now, pupils of 2 primary schools in Nairobi failed to resume their classes at the beginning of the new academic year following a row over the school's ownership despite a government order for learning to resume. Today, the schools remain closed with the administrators planning privatization of the institutions. But as Catherine Omontho reports, an agreement between the government and the Visa Oshual community could see the community lose the title deeds of the parcels of land if they go ahead with the privatization.
On the first day of school, instead of walking into neatly arranged classrooms, pupils of Khalsa Boys and Girls Primary School walked into this. Empty rooms with their belongings strewn in every corner. Some pupils just picked up their belongings, others did the same, but not without making a statement first. These pupils are just a few of the thousands of boys and girls who have been caught up in a land ownership row between the government and some public school administrators.
I sincerely am very disappointed to see people only focusing on the title deed or on the buildings and the rest of it.
Across the city, at Visa Oshual Primary School, another city council school is affected. But these parents will not take the situation lying down. They have vowed to stop the Visa Oshual community from privatizing schools in its custody.
Kama kawaida sinatuma watoto leo. Nasemekana hakuna shule. Akakuja hapa. Ikikuja hapa akaambua kiti moja 1,500. Na mimi sina 1,500 yo watoto yangu ni 6.
The Visa Oshual community land row is one that has been ongoing for months now, but the government has made it clear that the schools on the said parcels of land remain public schools, and the Visa Oshual community has no authority to privatize its schools without the possibility of losing title deeds issued in the 1950s.
Condition number 4 says that if the school erected on the land shall cease to function as such under the provisions of the Education Act, then the term hereby created, that is in the grant, shall ipso facto also be determined, and the land shall be deemed automatically to have reverted to the government.
Last month, the High Court ruled in favor of the Visa Oshual community by granting it court orders that allowed it to privatize in its custody. But there's a contradiction here because it contradicts with an agreement made between the government and Visa Oshual community in 1954 that termed Visa Oshual community as a trustee of the various parcels of land in which these schools sit on and not as an owner. Catherine Omontho, KTN in Nairobi.
Time for business. Operators of pubs, hotels and restaurants are threatening to seek legal redress should the Alcoholic Drinks Control Amendment Bill pass into law in its current form. The proposed law intends to ban the sale of alcohol 2 days to the election, as well as further restricting drinking hours. Through their umbrella bodies, the operators argue that the bill is born out of sinister motives apart from being punitive.
Naivasha MP John Mutudho will always be remembered as the man who introduced laws that regulate the sale and consumption of alcohol in the country. In 2010, he successfully midwifed what came to be known as the Mutudho laws, and now wants amendments passed to regulate the sector even further. But players in the tourism industry and pub owners are urging MPs not to pass the Alcoholic Drinks Control Act Bill 2012, arguing it will have adverse economic implications on their business. Proposals in the new alcohol bill seek to stop the sale of alcohol 2 days prior to the general elections, and even advertisements that promote the sale of alcohol. Now, for industry stakeholders, they feel that this is over-regulation of the sector, and some of the new rules that are being brought in are open for contention once the new act is passed into law.
What are the repercussions? Have we thought about the repercussions? Are we going to transfer all the stocks of alcohol to people's houses? Then what will the impact of that be? It will take it now to the children that we are trying to protect. So this is something that we actually need to look into more carefully and not just prescribe short-term solutions.
For the pub owners, the potential revenue loss from the new laws could run into the billions. They say the punitive measures only seek to penalize and discredit legitimate businesses. Stakeholders say they are prepared to go to the court, challenging what they term as vague laws.
This bill is going to curtail more with the current drinking hours that are already restricted. Mr. Mutudho is going to restrict more on the operating hours And we feel this is actually making our business look illegal. We are investors.
If passed into law in its current state, industry stakeholders say that this could seriously restrict drinking hours, and little scenarios like the one behind me, empty bar spaces that could cost them anywhere up to 1.3 billion shillings annually.
While confusion continues to mar the switch-off of all unregistered SIM cards, with the communication regulator, the Communication Commission of Kenya, insisting that all required regulations are in place for the switch-off and that hawking of SIM cards is illegal. However, a spot check by KTN found out that the exercise is still alive. Our reporter Philip Keitans brings us this story.
6 days after the deadline of all SIM registration, one can still walk across the street and buy unregistered SIM card and use it. This is even as CCK continue to issue stern warning to all those who have not registered their SIM cards. I went out to the streets early today and I was able to buy a SIM card with the vendor unable to provide me with a registration form, only giving me directions to where I can get the form, but assures me that I can still use the SIM card in the meantime as it was already activated by the mobile service provider.
Naweza piga kasi ja register? Sawa, thanks.
Something that the acting director licensing, compliance and standards at the Communication Commission of Kenya, CCK, Christopher Kemei, termed illegal.
Anybody who is walking out there without the proper authorization, of course, commits an offense under the Act, and action will be taken accordingly.
Kemei further assured service providers that the regulations will be gazetted before the end of the week and that they should not be afraid to switch off any subscribers. However, the 300,000 penalty for every unregistered SIM card found in their systems. However, the 300,000 shillings penalty for every unregistered SIM card found in the system of any of the 4 operators, the regulator says will be slapped on them without any favors, as this is a matter of national security.
There are also many ills in society that people tend to perpetuate through the mobile phones, and these are the things that we wish to minimize, if not completely eradicate, by way of ensuring that everybody is identified with a particular communication channel. Yeah. So it's all about really all of us as members of the public in terms of securing ourselves in this digital era.
The regulator, however, appears to have its hands tied in trying to ensure that all the 4 mobile service providers comply with the directives, as it hopes that the operators will act in good faith. Even as the Communication Commission of Kenya continue to insist that all laws and regulations governing the registration of SIM card is in place, the situation on the street is contrary to this, only painting the Communication Commission of Kenya as a toothless bulldog that only barks but cannot bite. Philip Keitany for KTN Business Today.
While small-scale tea farmers across the country affiliated to Kenya Tea Development Agency go to the polls Tuesday, January 8th to elect directors for their factory companies. About 190,000 farmers who are also shareholders of the 4 tea factory companies managed by KTDA across the country will elect 1/3 of factory company directors who retire on rotation every year. Each factory company has 6 electoral areas, each represented by a director. 2 of the 6 directors must retire after serving for 3 years. The elections come at a time when tea farmers have enjoyed record high earnings. These earnings increased to 61.4 billion shillings in 2012, a 12.5% rise from the previous financial year. The total payout to farmers increased 45.3 billion shillings, which is the highest ever in the history of the country.
All right, welcome back. Now to you some sports brief. And national soccer team Harambee Stars was bundled out by the Burundi's Swallows. And while there are lessons that the federation, the team and all football stakeholders should learn, Kenya has been on a learning curve for far too long. And the big question is, will Kenya as a country ever learn and put its house in order to avoid such disastrous and heartbreaking results?
On Sunday, the match pitting hosts Harambee Stars and Burundi Swallows had a lot riding on it other than just the CHAN ticket to South Africa next year. CAF inaugurated this tournament for teams that failed to make it to the Africa Cup of Nations, where teams done with the big boys. Harambee Stars loss to Burundi means Stars have failed even to qualify in the second tier of the CAF Championship. While most of the players who played for Kenya and Sekafa, where the team finished runners-up to Uganda, featured lack of sharpness up front was the main undoing.
Nimeangalia hapa hakuna hata mtu anaweza kuchenga watu watatu wanne anaenda na mpira. Wote ndio iende.
James Nandwa faulted his firepower, but believes he was spot on with regard to his selection.
These players, they were scoring in the practice. That's why I picked them, and that's why they were in the first 11.
Kenya has been known to recycle the same players for a long time, and the CHAN Championships was a good platform to feature the age group teams. But the technical bench that inherited the CHAN team from Frenchman Henri Michel, who left the country in a half, had to make do with Kenya Premier League players.
Najua mimi siniko na lakini nimetamba kwenye passport ya wachezaji wakubwa miaka 32 34.
We have to build on the under 20 so that it can boost the national team. Like now we have been trying all the time. We normally have players coming in the national team. That consistency has not been there.
Kenya Premier League remains one of the most followed league in Africa, but the end product is either half-baked or ill-prepared for continental championships. This explains why Burundi, with their inferior league, could knock Kenya out of contention.
The team which we were playing with is not as good as I know as a coach.
The federation should come out early and decide on the national team's technical bench instead of having a caretaker staff while matches come thick and fast. Reporting for KTN Sports Today, I'm Hassan Juma.
All right, Andre Ayew has been dropped from Ghana's squad to the African Cup of Nations. The French-based star got a hamstring injury in training last week and failed to meet Saturday's deadline for the players to report for Ghana's pre-tournament training camp in Abu Dhabi. Now, Nigeria coach Stephen Kesh has dropped 4 players from his squad.
Nigeria coach Stephen Keshi released injured Turkey-based striker Uche Kalu and Kilmanok Srabiu Ibrahim from his squad on Monday ahead of the final selection for the African Cup of Nations. Keshi also dropped Henry Uche and Papa Idris from contention for his 23-man squad for the tournament in South Africa. The deadline for squads to be named is on Wednesday. The Nigeria Football Federation said the 4 players left the team camp in Portugal on Monday. Keshi has 27 players left in training group, but is almost certainly without Shola Miobi for the tournament after the striker remained in England with the Premier League team Newcastle. Ghana coach Kwesi Appiah has dropped midfielder Andre Ayew from his squad for this month's Africa Cup of Nations. The French-based star got a hamstring injury in training last week and failed to meet Saturday's deadline for players to report for Ghana's pre-tournament training camp in Abu Dhabi.